Hello and welcome to the We Are Makers podcast. We're Kate and Jack Lenny, a husband and wife team sharing the stories of makers from around the world. We travel to the makers' workshops, studios and sheds to bring you honest conversations with the people behind the craft, right where the making happens. This podcast is an extension of our quarterly print magazine, our original project born in 2020 from a love of craft and the need to champion makers beyond the digital world. This podcast is a true labour of love, and if you enjoy what we do, there's a few ways in which you can support us. First, subscribe to our quarterly magazine. It's beautifully printed and delivered straight to your door every February, May, August and November, and it's what makes everything we do possible. You can also follow this podcast, leave a review, or if you fancy, buy us a coffee to help us going on those long travel days. Whether you're listening with a coffee in hand or busy making at your bench, let's dive into today's episode.
How long's this one that we're sitting in?
Since 1996.
96.
1996.
And
Yep.
this was the second one.
Yeah, our own home was the first one. I was explaining to Kate, downstairs there's that display of antique tools that my father gave to Kayle. But the house across the road from where we're building was where I grew up. Well, I moved here from Washington State. But when we moved here, we bought that house, and it was an original hand-hewn timber frame that my dad took back to the frame and exposed it. And then he just always loved anything, the ancient quality of things, and wanted to always restore them. And so that love kind of got passed on from father-in-law to son-in-law. It's so the love of timber frame came from my dad.
That was like an old Connecticut salt box frame that was framed of like antique heart pine, which were massive pine trees that used to grow here that all got cut down now.
Okay.
They're gone. And chestnut, which is no longer here either. It had a blight back in the 1900s that wiped it out. But he ripped it all down to the studs. It's gorgeous. It's gorgeous frame. And it has the patina that we were discussing earlier. The 200-year-old patina.
Starting to go a little bit grey.
Oh, it's gorgeous.
And wide pine.
Yep, some of
Very
the floorboards are super wide. Yeah, it's a cool frame. But yeah, this is the second one that my mom and dad built.
And Dad helped Greg build that.
Yeah.
And then he worked for a large timber frame company for 9 years after that.
So is he second generation timber frame in your family?
No, not really, because my father is a minister and psychologist.
Okay.
But Dad grew up in a building family.
Okay.
Right.
Down in Princeton, New Jersey, actually. And so then it kind of got passed along in a
Vicarious way.
yeah, until now, then it seems to be father to son. And
Yeah,
So edition 4 was the first time
we spoke.
we had settlement post and beam.
Yeah.
A lot's changed since then.
Yeah.
There's been a lot of changes.
There's been a lot of change then for what looks like the better. Massive boost in the amount of customers you can serve now. Connie, your husband, Greg, Kayle, your dad, he set up settlement post and beam, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
When did they officially start settlement post and beam, and what did they intend to do when they set it up first?
so we started it in 1996, and actually at the time, early in 1996, Greg had never intended to quit for the company he was working for. But we purchased this property it was a small chunk of family property that we purchased from his aunt and uncle. And we, at that point, decided to put a home on it that I would eventually have for like a studio, because I was teaching art at the time at a local school. And there wasn't really the idea that he was going to go out on his own. But then when we got the frame up, it just garnered, so much interest that at that point he decided, okay, I'm going to go out on my own. The company that he was with at the time had gone to a CNC machine, and he wasn't real thrilled about, at least at that point, becoming, more of a, in his mind, a laborer. He wasn't going to be running the CNC machine. He would have been kind of feeding the CNC machine. And he was actually one of their master cutters. Yeah. So he did a lot of the fancy work. And so that's when all of a sudden it was just like, okay, we'll do this. We'll bite the bullet. I had a good teaching job, so he had a chance to kind of get things going. And he spent 5 years getting it going well. Mm-hmm. And then I was able to retire or resign from my teaching position and put the studio in here into the model home.
Nice.
So then Kayle grew up with that. I mean, he grew up with
So
timber frames.
yeah, so Settlement Post and Beam officially started in 1996, and I would have been like eight years old. So I grew up in the shop. We started out like this house was actually hand cut in the driveway outside
Really?
here.
Yep.
Yeah,
Same driveway that's there now.
right there. Yep. So he, just was working out in the elements, and then as he was building this, like my mom said, it gained some interest, and we landed a few frames, or they landed a few frames.
Yeah.
From it. I was 8.
Still part of it.
It's not part of it.
And they ended up building a little pole barn. It was like 30 foot by 50 foot long. It sat in the same spot as our current shop. Gave him a little more space, a dry roof over his head, and he would cut 1 or 2 frames a year out of it. And that was the roots to it.
So cool.
Connie, what did you think it was going to be back then?
So I thought it would be, I thought it would stay what it was, more like, him cutting a couple of homes a year, real nice homes, going through the process of, designing with the customer and so forth. And then it was going to be my studio, which it has, it's stayed all
Still is,
that.
yeah.
But then when Kayle came into the business, what has it been 12 years ago now? Maybe longer.
Yeah, 12 years.
12 years, then it steadily got bigger and bigger and bigger, and so, and now it's really turned into quite a enterprise from what we intended, what we thought it would originally be, but we've just really enjoyed the process, and watching our son too, to, actually have vision for something that we originally had vision for, and make it
So
even
special.
more.
Yeah, and I think the whole reason for this move, and it goes back to some of the conversations that I've had with you guys before, this is a good life. It's like, how does it get any better than cutting timber frames, installing timber frames, and still having time for your family? So I think when my mom and dad started this business, my dad was my baseball coach.
Very true.
My parents are both involved in the church. They're members of the local community in a lot of different aspects. And I think that building a small business where you dictate your own hours, you can dictate the workload that you're interested in taking on, had a huge upside. So I think that was a major deciding factor. It's like, okay, maybe I can even if I make the same amount of money that I'm making over here, I'm going to have my free time now. So my dad's thinking, I can coach Kayle, I can spend more time with my sister Gabrielle, more time with my mom. Like, I think that was big, and that has kind of woven through a lot of the decisions that we've made as the business has grown. We've never set out to build something that's bigger than the life that would allow us to still come home at night, eat dinner with our families, and coach a baseball team if I want to.
That's exactly right. We're not really commercial minded.
Yeah.
It's more, we're more, and actually even
I think I'd push back on that. I don't think you're traditionally commercial minded.
Yeah.
You're quite you're doing
That's very true.
You're doing what I can see so far as a very good commercial job between the hours you decide to be commercial.
Yes.
Yes.
There you go.
It's been a calculated blend.
Yeah. There you go. I think that's true. And we can, like, customers have my cell phone number. There's things like that. And, the contacts, the architect contacts the builders, they have his cell phone number. Customers that he's working with personally that are doing a very customized job, they're going to have his cell phone number. But typically, we can look at it, and it's not that we're going to ignore it, but we can, if we're in the middle of something with a family member at the time, and I think our customers and contacts would understand that, okay, there are some precedent for at times where, like, I actually have to take second place.
Yeah, we love our clients.
We do.
We love them, but from day one, we set boundaries too. And if there's an email coming in after 6 o'clock, I'm not going to look at it. I'm not going to look at it until I have my first cup of coffee in the morning. Then maybe I'll be getting back to you. But there's hardly anything that's that pressing that needs to be addressed
If it's on an email, it ain't that pressing.
And even those little emails that come in with a quick question that take 5 minutes to answer, a lot of times there's, you look at it, you don't have time to answer it right at that second, but it's in the back of your mind, you're thinking about that, then you're thinking, oh, I got to get back to that.
How true
and
is
it's
that?
eaten up. It's like job creep, work like
Yeah.
scope creep. And
I took email notifications off of Kate's Apple Watch. I don't have email notifications on my phone. I've got
Me
them,
either.
I've got them on my laptop, and that's it. When my
It's
laptop's
changed so
open,
much.
that's when I'm
That's
doing
when
work.
you're working.
And typically that's the first thing I do in the morning when I get up. Like I'll do 5 till 7 on emails, and then I'll do them at a later point in the day after lunch or something.
Yep.
But they're the times that I do it.
I think that's
block
pretty
it.
legitimately the way we kind of work too. It's like I'm aware that there's something there that needs my. But a lot of times there's some research to be done too. It's not like you can't get an answer back. And I think that typically customers know that. When I would say that we are a lot more, really available is when we're doing an install. Or we're really close to an install, because at that point they may need you. They need you accessible. They can't, and you have to take that into consideration. Like that something came up that like it needs our
Requires
input
immediate.
really quick.
Yeah,
And
absolutely.
that's
But when you
understandable.
love what you do and when you feel like you're building it for the right reasons and alongside your family, it's really easy to step back into working really long hours.
Right.
And for me, it's imperative that I keep things a little bit compartmentalized. And we put a lot of things in place to kind of
Protect.
safeguard
And,
some sacred
and you
ground.
want Landry,
Yeah.
our grandson, you want him to be, you want him to grow
I was dad.
up
I had
just
my
like,
dad growing up. I
Yeah.
had both my parents.
Yep. And it was,
Around.
he was a baseball player. It's like if he
Sure.
struggled in a game for whatever reason hitting, it's like, hey, Dad, can we just go hit some balls? And
Yeah,
Mom's in the
practice.
outfield shagging balls,
Yeah.
We did that for hours. But, that was wonderful family time. And I'll tell you, when I was still teaching and Greg was working in the workshop, I would go by, I would honk the horn, he put his tools away, he was coming home.
Oh, that's great.
And it was pretty much always like that.
Low tech signal, like, hey,
Yeah.
dinner is
Home time.
Yep. It's time for family, and
shut it down.
So
that's
having
so true.
seen all of that, Kayle, why did you not get involved with settlement post and beam straight off the bat? What did you do in between?
So I would say when you grow up this close to something, it's really hard to appreciate it for what it is. So I grew up in the midst of seeing my dad out there working, cutting timber frames. I see how hard he worked, like manual labor. And I do think that when I was going through school, there was a bit of a stigma around trades in general, getting your hands dirty, sweating.
I'd say there
Doing your
still
job?
has up until probably 3 or 4 years ago when my brother started looking for a job. That's the first time I really seen a shift in the job market, appreciating people that got their hands dirty.
Yeah. So I think growing up, I didn't necessarily even consider that as an option. I went to school, got a 4-year bachelor's in marketing. I met my wife at Penn State University while I was there. And I think I also maybe wanted to get away from the small town.
Yeah.
Like you grow up in a small town, you want to broaden your horizons a little bit. So we moved to Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, which is close to where my wife grew up. And I just took whatever job I could find. And it was right after the recession. I graduated in 2010. The job market was brutal. There wasn't a lot available. So the first job I could get was I was a freight broker for a company called PLS Logistics in Pittsburgh. And I was basically hammering the phones. I was on the phone all day talking to people about like transporting steel, all sorts of stuff. And I hated it.
I can imagine.
So it's funny. For Christmas one year, I didn't have a lot of money at the time, and I started thinking like, what could I make people for Christmas? So I'm like, okay, maybe I could rebuild my parents' website. It's an expertise that I've got.
So handy nowadays, huh? Marketing.
So true.
Yeah.
Absolutely. So I started rebuilding the website, and I thought, holy smokes, this is cool. Like, how did I not see this before?
Yeah, right, okay.
Yeah, so
Because you're looking at it from a market and rebuild point of view, not from mum and dad.
yeah, and also I think it made me zoom out to a little bit of a 100-yard view of the whole operation. And I thought, this is really awesome. Like, I look up to a lot of businesses that do similar crafts, and why don't I give mom a call and see if there's a way to
That's
get
awesome.
involved? So they basically told me, like, well, right now there's enough to support me and your dad. So if you want on board, we'd love to have you, but you need to sell some timber frames. So I built the website. I sold the timber frame, and I remember
Nice.
calling her, and it's
Do you
like,
remember?
hey, look at this. We just got an email that says this timber frame was sold. I think it could pay my
Yeah.
My wage.
my wages. Exactly.
That's so cool.
Yeah.
How did that feel?
Oh, I'll tell you, I still remember when he called, because we really didn't think he would ever come back here. And we were just thrilled that he was still in Pennsylvania. I mean, like, to just at least have your child, like, within 4 hours, you can take a weekend and you can go see him and whatnot. And we were perfectly happy with that. But when it was like, he just said that he'd like to come here to work, it was like, wow. And it was really exciting.
Yeah.
No doubt about it. And I think it just, and it actually made Greg, my husband, feel, I think, legitimized too, because it's like, oh, Kayle thinks what I do is cool.
Oh yeah.
It's like
Yeah.
my son thinks what I do is cool.
Yeah.
Every
And
dad's dream.
Your
son looks up to you, every dad's dream, right?
exactly. To have your son want to continue what you started, and then and we've always been those kind of parents, like, once you're on that path, okay, buddy, now it's your dream too. You make it what you want to. We're eventually going to step back from this. We'll be there for support, but this is going to be your baby.
And there's been
so
a
you
lot
take it the direction you want to go.
There's been a lot of iterations along the way.
Yeah.
Yeah, and really the hero in the whole thing that made the whole thing possible was my wife,
Yes.
saying that
Very
she
true.
would be willing to move to a
Yes.
small rural area and find a new job and
Yes.
build a new life here, and she was on
Live in
board.
this very art
Yeah.
studio we're sat in now
Yes.
for a couple of years.
Exactly.
Very
yeah,
true.
absolutely. We had to live in the model home,
Yeah.
Yeah.
just like Arrested Development for a few years. And
Not the worst thing in the world.
no,
but-
it's not the worst thing.
And we had
We're lucky to have it as an
Yeah.
option. And but
and it
yeah.
worked out really well, because we had little things set up, like meal share, like, okay, I'm not cooking for you all the time or anything.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So they shared meal making and so forth, and it worked out really, really well. So then they could build their house. And also we were really fortunate, even though we are rural, we are very close to Corning, New York, Ithaca, where she now works at Cornell, but she worked at Corning for a number of years. And I'm sure that helped us on that front. But I love my daughter-in-law, and I would have loved her even if she didn't move.
Yeah.
But I love her even more because she moved. And I'm sorry to her mother.
Yep, and she helps us a ton with the business
She
today.
does.
She's a sounding
She's a
board.
brilliant person.
She's a sounding board for everything, and she's she's got the worst salary of all of us, 'cause she's not on payroll for someone supposed to be, but
No.
we tap into her
We
into
do.
her expertise all the time.
She gives us lots of great ideas.
Yeah.
And the truth is Delaney is one of those people that could have been an artist as well. She could,
Yeah.
in fact, her mother has a degree in art. So the art thing is kind of a family trend.
Oh yeah. Very
You
much
know,
so.
It's
What was it like learning to be a master cutter off your dad?
It was easy. Not to learn to be a good cutter of timber frames, but it was easy to work and learn from him.
Yeah.
Nice.
Because he was my baseball coach for
Yeah.
ever since you were 5.
14 years or something.
All
He
right,
coached
wow,
my
okay.
baseball
Wow.
teams. I was used to learning from him, and he's an incredible teacher, which isn't something that I picked up from him. He's an excellent teacher, though, and right from day one we got along. Like, I can count the number of altercations that we've had on a job site or in the shop on one hand.
Wow. Okay.
And it's not because of me, it's because of him. So I would say that it was a fairly easy transition. As far as learning the craft, that's difficult. I think it's easy to pick up the initial skills, using a chisel and a mallet, understanding the way wood grain works, that sort of thing. But it's like any craft, you're not a master of it until you've got 10,000 hours or something, they say under your belt. So it was
I'm not
years.
sure I even believe that. I think it's double
exactly.
that. You know?
And honestly, the more there's been a lot of iterations of this business as we went along, and I think that the big reason for that is because as we learn more, you realize you don't know.
No, very true.
You don't know everything, or even a quarter of everything. So we try to bring on experts in engineering, in design, manufacturing, wherever we can, to pick their brains and to talk to them about the better ways to do things.
Yeah.
So I would say that becoming a master cutter is difficult, and I'm not there yet.
You say bring in other people externally. How's that been as a small family business? I say small. It's quite a big operation you've got. A small family business. Because that could be quite difficult for a lot of people. Like, this is very much your baby. It's not common for people to be like, yeah, we bring people in all the time.
Yeah. I think that we vet people very well.
Very well.
We sit down on Zoom calls multiple times before we hire any consultant or before we bring on a freelancer. We want to make sure that they're going to mesh with our team, that they're going to mesh with our clients, and that they're going to provide what our business needs in a timely fashion, in a professional manner. So we've certainly had to cut ties with some folks along the way, but I would say that we've got a tight-knit team of freelancers surrounding us that act as an extension of Settlement Post and Beam, and I'm proud of the work that they're doing, and there's not really anything that I would change.
I could speak to that too, just looking on as far as like the process of, because a lot of that was him, the process of watching him go through that. I mean, he'd run this all by Greg and I, as he came up with a new person or whatever. But his background in marketing and in his background in, just the tech world in a way, he was very good at researching ahead of approaching. Okay. So he would do tons of research on a person prior to approaching them. So to me, in a way, it almost ensured success, that it was going to work out. And he's always been good, personable on a phone or whatever. And I think, and actually quite humble. And I don't think when you're working with somebody that is like an expert in something that you're maybe not an expert in. I mean, he was an expert in certain parts of the timber frame world, but not an expert in other parts. And his approaching those people with, first of all, maybe it took a little bit of guts in a lot of ways. Some of the people he approached in the beginning, it's like, you did? You called them? I'm like, wow, they're kind of like up here. And he said, well, it went really, really well. And I feel like they appreciated this young guy actually coming to them with a humble mindset and then taking their advice. Because in a lot of cases, they gave advice and we took the advice. It's...
And in a small family business, I think it's easy to become kind of insulated from the rest of the industry.
Yeah, I do too.
So to me, I love those conversations with folks that have maybe a little different experience than I have, because it allows me to tap into something that we're never going to be able to replicate here, because we're a small family business that's on a postage stamp in rural Pennsylvania. So if I hop on a Zoom call with somebody that's the absolute best in their field, in a field that is directly linked to our business somehow, I just can't even express how big that is for a small business. And the other thing that we've found is like, if we were to try to hire somebody in those capacities and bring them in here and train them, first of all, we're not going to get the talent pool, the talent level that we can just build relationships with freelancers with. So I would say it'd be really difficult to produce as good of a product as we do, being insulated and having everyone that has a hand in it beyond our settlement post and being payroll and living in Troy, Pennsylvania.
Right. And the thing is too, is we've discussed this a number of times. We could bring people in, we could train those on those, positions like engineers and so forth. But then what's to say we put all this into them and then they leave because their family's not here. They're, all that kind of stuff. So then you have to start the process again. It makes more sense to, especially in the world we have today with Zoom calls and things like this, to let them live where they want to live. Let them work with us as much as they want to work with us, or much time as they can provide us. And, but let them, kind of be in control of their life at the same time.
They're going to stay, aren't they?
To me, that makes tons of sense.
We do exactly the same with We Are Makers. And I think there's a second, so I agree with everything you've said, but there's also a second fold to it. Our magazine designer works for a brewery, designs packaging, designs, he's done packaging for all sorts of stuff. He's done magazines for all sorts of people, all sorts of stuff. Our copywriter does proofs on websites for all sorts of clients as well.
Right.
And I even think to my engineering practice, like different films I'm on require completely different things of me, but they're all interlinked. You wouldn't get that if they were just a settlement post and beam engineer.
Right.
They wouldn't know all the other things.
Exactly.
Whereas if you're pulling them in, like your guy from Switzerland, he's seen countless log cabins go up. What is transferable? What can you pull? What can you... all those things are so important.
Even connections and things like that.
You're tapping into their connections.
Fasteners. It's just like they you can pull from other industries. Exactly.
Absolutely.
I really do feel like that Kayle's come up with a process that's working well. And then as far as the day-to-day operations, well, for instance, Greg is out there running the CNC machine right now. Well, we got to keep that thing moving. I mean, or he'd be in here visiting as well. But all those years that were spent hand cutting and so forth, they are not wasted. I mean, we have certain aspects of the timber frames that still have to have hand processes done that take certain techniques that only a man can do, or a girl can do, whatever. But when a beam is set up, he's knowing in his mind how that beam needs to be set up. He can look at the way that the machine's gonna cut it on the computer screen and so forth. But he has to be thinking three-dimensional is, I don't want that knot.
And I'll say that he's got a deeper understanding of the nature of the material that we're feeding through it, because he's been touching it with his hands for 40 years.
Right, and it's got to be crowned right. It's got to be all these different things.
There's a lot of subtle nuances that are super transferable, moving from a completely hands-on, handmade structure to something that's being roughed out with machines.
And I think Kayle totally appreciates his dad in the fact that, I mean, the truth is, when we first started this process, Greg was 62, getting the machine. And you're telling this guy that he's got to learn how to run a computer-operated machine.
It's quite the
and
job.
he was up for it. I mean, and he does a great job. I mean,
but that's another beauty of a smaller entity. We're nimble, and we can make those changes kind of on a whim, so to speak. It allows us to,
flexible,
recognize an opportunity and capitalize on it without a bunch of bureaucracy or.
True. And it's like speaking to family. Like our daughter is involved in the business too now, Gabrielle, and. But the thing is, so she's in the workshop. I go into the workshop a fair amount.
See you in there today.
I'm in there a lot.
It's so good to see.
And we have noise canceling headphones on. If I get a call, I walk out. I take the call, or I can even talk right through the headphones. But what that allows her is she has very good access to our other grandsons for school and so forth. Drops them off, picks them up. She can, run in if they're sick, that kind of thing, or even be backup for our other for his son Landry. If daycare didn't work out that day or whatever, well, then there's Aunt Gabe. It's just kind of there's a nice family aspect to that. And because Gabe, we call her Gabe. Because Gabe and Kayle grew up, they're 18 months apart. They grew up tight, and they work well together too. And they never were fighters. So it's been a good thing. Yep.
It'd be very easy for people to listen to this and think, "Oh, Jack and Kate, you've went to listen to someone who's given up the craft and put it all on a CNC machine." And I want to address that because we talked about it when we were talking about designing the timber frames. I don't think you can be a good engineer or designer unless you've made something by hand first.
Right.
There is just things that you do not know until you've been shouted at by 20, 30 contractors because it doesn't work. If you make these mistakes by hand, there's very much an aspect of craft there.
Yeah.
Your dad left the original place to do it himself by hand when they first employed a CNC machine. We've gone full circle and we've now got, and I know we've not just got a CNC, there's a 7-figure investment in there at some point. That I'm sure still hurts some days when you think about that invoice.
Certainly.
How did that come about, especially for Greg, for your husband Connie, and for your dad? How did that conversation come about? You've said he took to it very well. Like, what does that look like? And where do you feel the craft still comes into it?
So I think that it all comes down to your definition of craft. For us, when my dad started this, his definition of craft was just the making of the piece.
Yeah.
It wasn't the back and forth with a client. It wasn't the all the preliminary design work and the helping decipher the best way to build something out of a structural framework of timber alongside a design team, an architect, an engineer. He was thinking about craft in a pretty narrow definition. I would say now our definition of craft has expanded to not just the manufacturing of the pieces, because at the end of the day, we're not a parts supplier.
No.
Like, this isn't a commodity. The craft encompasses the whole life cycle of this timber frame structure.
Right.
So maybe it starts with a client coming to us with a dream to build a new home or a party barn, or they just want some great room trusses, something like that. We use our connections to align them with a designer that we think can help bring that to life. We hold their hand the entire way. We allow them to tap into our expertise of doing this for 40 plus years. And I think that is now part of our definition of craft alongside manufacturing. So as far as CNC specifically, for us, again, this came down to what do we want out of this business and what is our product? Our product, to me, I wanted to produce the best possible timber frame and get it out, get our work, our art out to as many people as we can. And I think we're doing that better than ever with a CNC machine. So I really feel like I keep coming back to this idea of work-life balance. Not only has this given us more work-life balance and the ability to reach a greater audience, but it's also allowed us to have options for a future where my dad, the master cutter that knows how to cut everything by hand, is going to be retiring. So there was a lot of small deciding factors that went into it. And for my dad in particular, I mean, the three of us built this together. Certainly, I feel like I've had more I don't want to say I've had more invested in it, but I've given a lot more thought about where I want this to go in the future, because it is my future.
It's your future.
More my future than theirs at this
Exactly.
point.
Yeah.
And they've been really good. My parents have been incredible at allowing me to voice those opinions and supporting. She's gonna fall.
That's all right. She's fine.
And supporting me through those decisions. So I think that my dad saw this as a fun opportunity to build something alongside his son.
I
Something
agree.
new.
Yep.
You go,
And I
Blair.
also think that
Just lay down.
Greg also, again, age came into play. I mean, you think about how much chiseling his arms have done. You know, how much mallet work. I mean, he's strong. He's been able to do this his whole life. His joints are still good, you know, but we want him to stay that way.
Yeah.
And so that was another part of it too. It's like, how am I going to keep my dad healthy?
Yeah.
And this was a way
It's awesome.
to alleviate some of that. And then the other, I want to speak to something too that.
Go for
So my background is in studio art. I have an art education degree as well. But my thesis was on the validity of computer-generated art back in the day. I mean, this is back in the 80s, okay? Back when, is art, if it's done with a computer, is it really art? I mean, it was a really big question back then. And so I did a ton of research on it and came to the conclusion, yes, it is art, because it's just another mechanism for creating art. It's a tool.
Yeah.
So it's just a different tool. There's still the artist behind
Love it.
that. And
We've got a great adage to this. I love this conversation because I am so on board with what you're saying.
Yep. I mean, to me, tools that artists have used have developed all through history.
Yeah, according to the technology.
Yeah,
at the
according
time.
to the technology. It's just that we made such a leap so quickly that it was quite a lot for people to wrap their heads around. But again, like typically a computer artist still went to art school. They know how to use a brush. They know color. They've been trained in design and color, all these different kinds of things. So you can't say they're not an artist just because they use a computer. You know,
And as long as you have the foundations.
Yes, you
It's
need
like
the
you
foundation.
skip the foundation bit. You know, you
Exactly.
learning how to cut properly.
Yeah.
I often look at, Kate's art and creating the magazine. Her brush is just a MacBook.
Yes,
Yeah.
Mine's when I'm designing something, it's just a
absolutely.
keyboard and mouse.
Yeah.
You look at a lot of tattoo artists have
Right.
moved to iPads. Traditionally, you look at blacksmiths. Blacksmiths, as soon as power hammers came, they went to them.
Yeah.
We talked about this. There may be pushback against the CNC machine versus this, but if you had some like cool old 50s, 60s CNC machine that was like a pain in the ass to keep running,
Right.
that would be seen as like the cool struggling artist kind of thing.
Steam powered.
But it's still the most up-to-date tool
Most
of the
up-to-date-
time. Artists
exactly.
and craftspeople, certainly craftspeople through the ages, traditional craftspeople, they have always employed the best method
Right.
of making the thing happen.
Sure.
Well, and you
what do you
think
think the
about even
masters were doing?
Yeah, and you think that when a camera came into being, I mean, Kate's she's an artist with a camera. You can't take that away because you're not doing like a portrait with
Yeah,
oil
you're not
paints and
doing it.
whatnot. To me, there's not even a case anymore against photographers being artists. But back in the day, there was.
Yeah,
When they
yeah.
first came, it's
Really?
like, well, you
Yeah.
snapped that,
Yeah, your dad wasn't
know.
chiseling with flint
Yeah,
and
yeah.
stone, right? He
No,
was
Yeah.
chiseling.
no.
He was chiseling with the
exactly.
best quality, newest tools he could get.
And I would be the last person to ever discredit somebody that wants to be a purist. And
Absolutely.
So purist and artist and purist and craft,
Absolutely.
they're two very
Sure.
different channels.
It's
Yeah.
just a different way of crafting. So we're employing a different tool. I would hope that a purist timber framer wouldn't look at what we're doing and completely discredit our work. Certainly, it's produced differently than theirs may be. Is it a better or worse product? That's up to the client,
Yeah,
right?
that's true.
I'm here to say I think that our product is
the best it's ever been.
Yeah.
Really?
With a CNC
I
machine.
totally agree. And the thing is there's an art behind. I mean, I come in and watch him working on a timber frame design, and he runs them by me, obviously with our designers and architect contacts as well. But a lot of times he's running it by Mom too. What do you think, Mom? Yeah, that's cool.
Right.
Like it?
And there's, I think a lot of times he forgets that he's an artist, and he does a lot of times. I listen to some of the conversations with, well, I don't know. I think that should be this way. And so you can't tell me then that that's not an artist. You are making decisions about the way something is going to end up looking.
Yes.
Yeah.
That's an artist.
Yes.
I have a lot of aesthetic opinions.
He does.
Yeah.
For sure.
Yep, and he comes by them very natural.
No denying that.
Yeah. But it's a great conversation. And again, I just always come back to, craft is a deep understanding of something and producing a desirable outcome. So to me,
I like that definition. That's
Love
good.
it.
that's what we're doing.
Yeah, craft is a deep understanding of something and producing a desirable outcome. That's a really good definition.
That is a good one.
I might punch that for my forward. That's good. You say you think your product's the best it's ever been.
Mm-hmm.
What is your product? What do you view as the product as a whole?
Like I said, I think our product is the entire life cycle of the timber frame.
The
So
design.
our product is the managing relationships with clients, with design partners, with timber suppliers, with steel suppliers, with steel artisans.
Very true.
That's certainly a lot of it. Manufacturing is certainly a part of it. But I think the whole is the entire life cycle.
So until this frame is standing and the general contractor is starting to
Insulate it and build walls around it and stuff, that is our product. And honestly, maybe it even goes beyond that. I haven't really thought about this a whole lot, to be honest.
How-
but maybe it goes beyond that.
Right. Well, and I do think when you're talking structure, then livability.
Yes.
Workability. I mean, it may be depending on what the building is. It could be a wedding pavilion. It could be a wedding barn. It could be a barn that is going to house your antique car collection. It could be a barn that is going to be a horse barn. It can be a home. So to me, that livability thing at the end is the final stamp of approval, and we get the nicest comments.
bet you do.
I mean, we just got a call yesterday from a customer last year. Called, and I didn't even tell you yet, Kayle, but
Oh, there you go.
he called and he said, "I just want to say that this, our home turned out beautiful. We're really pleased." So to me, that's the final step in the whole process, to know that you did your best. And not that we didn't get those calls before, we did.
No, of course.
But I do feel like now there are certain things that you're designing into them that would be taking into play the future more.
Yes.
Yeah, and I'm really glad you asked this question, because I feel like it made me think about it. I think that our product is actually less so the physical product and more like the awe and wonder that you get when you step into the building down the road.
Yeah.
And that's like an enduring
Yeah.
product,
Yeah.
right?
Right.
Like that's going to be here in 200 years when you come in. Maybe it'll be even amplified at that point, because there's a patina on the wood now, and there's this awe and mystique
Yes.
of
There's
something that's been there for 200
the dent
years.
that your kid made when they ran their tricycle
absolutely.
into whatever,
Yeah,
you
right.
know?
the little
And
signs of life that
So much
something's
story.
been lived in.
the beam that has the marks of how, the ages that they grew up,
Yeah,
how tall
absolutely.
they were. Now, in fact, right now we're in the middle of building our retirement home, which will be also a nice model home, another
This is the one
model
we were
home.
just in?
Yep, you just toured with us. And the builder that's enclosing it and so forth, last year we did a timber frame for his new home.
Really?
And he does a lot of, finishes off a lot of the homes in the area for us. And he tells me all the time, Connie, he says, I sit in my, we just did a great room for him. It's a large, great room though. And I sit there and I just look up You know, and he says, I just have such a nice time sitting there drinking my coffee and looking up. You know, and those are the stories that I feel like that really warm your heart as a maker.
Oh, yeah.
Sure.
You know, it's no different than the person that turned the fancy bowl, and to see people eating their popcorn from that bowl, and you think they're going to eat it for how many generations? That bowl's getting passed on. You know it is.
Nothing happens to a wood bowl.
No,
It just gets better.
exactly. You know, that
Mugs are a good
popcorn.
one.
Yeah.
Yeah. Ceramic mugs are a good one.
Mugs,
because
absolutely.
we've got a great mug collection just from people that have given them and whatnot.
Yep.
And whenever people come round to our house that are
I'm like, oh, I've got a story about that one.
when they're
Exactly.
not from that world, you can see gears ticking.
Yeah.
You can.
Yeah.
Where people are just like, oh wait, there's a person that made this.
There's a person that
Like
made
those
this.
grooves are somebody's thumb.
Yeah.
Running up the inside of
This
it.
is not my normal mug, but I have a mug like
Yeah.
that. It was a wood-fired mug. It has this tiny little salamander on the handle, and
a good
I love
mug.
that mug. And that
It's a good mug. It
I'm
is.
very careful with that mug, 'cause
Yeah,
that
yeah.
one will get passed on.
Yeah,
Kate.
yeah.
Yeah.
That's amazing.
I think you're only one of only two makers that we've ever spoke to that you can be inside their product.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, I never
So-
thought about that one.
It's a different scale.
It's
Yeah.
a different scale. Does it feel like a different scale to you?
Yeah.
You know, and here's the thing. So I've, over the years, this was, you know, my studio and an artisan stop for Pennsylvania. And the truth is, when people would first walk in and they hadn't been here, of course, I'm going to give them a little bit of a spiel about the place and so forth. And one of the things I would always say was, well, my small art is housed inside of my husband's big art. You know,
Nice.
it's like, it's a piece of sculpture,
lovely.
really. You know,
Yeah, it is.
we've often talked about timber frames as not needing as much as in the line of furnishings, because the timber frame itself is a giant piece of furniture.
Oh, yeah.
So they really don't. You don't need to clutter them with a lot of furniture. You want to look at the frame.
Yeah.
Much of the engineered world, and I'm going through the whole thing at the moment, I think there's when you become really good at something, or to become really good at something, I think you need to learn it, you need to practice it, and then you need to teach it. And certainly from my engineering side of things, I'm
Yeah.
trying to kind of impart the things that I've learned on various other juniors or whatever that looks like. Because much of the engineered world is hidden behind, in our case, drywall. It's hidden
Right.
behind, stick frames are hidden behind drywall, services are hidden behind drywall. Much of the amazing engineering that goes into vehicles is hidden behind, bodywork. It's
Right.
maybe why classic motorbikes are so appealing to every guy and many
Yeah.
women ever. Do you ever think about everything's on show that you guys do?
Yes.
Yes.
Everything's
Everything
on
you
show.
see.
Does that weigh on you, or does it?
No. It keeps me very honest.
Yes.
Yeah.
I will say that's the main beauty of a timber frame right there. And coming from a rural area that had a lot of vernacular like barn architecture that was very similar
Yes.
to this, that people still go in today and they're like blown away by.
Yep.
I think that's the beauty in it. That you get to trace the load paths. You can see the connections, how everything comes together. How, like, if snow sits on this roof, how is it going to get transferred to the foundation? That's probably why we've built for a lot of engineers over the years. Because,
Yeah.
Probably
like
true.
they come in and
They see all the workings and
it's like it's
We had a
all on
whole
display.
conversation in that other house about load paths and the way beams are tied together. I've never had that sort of conversation in a house.
Yeah,
Never.
And this is the same reason that you walk into like an industrial design with like steel trusses that are now exposed. It was an old factory. It's the same reason that that's so appealing to
Yes.
people. It's because it's out of the ordinary and it's all on display, nothing hidden. It's just plain honest architecture. Everything is got to be honest because it's right there in front of you, and there's no hiding it.
Heathrow Airport's a great example of it. And I was pointing some bits
Yeah.
out to you,
Oh,
like
yeah.
a total engineering nerd.
Yeah. I did ask you the question, so.
Because there's a lot of post beams, there's a lot of posts and a lot of pins and a lot of some real nice joint work that you can very clearly trace roof loadings down to the floor. And I do see multi-million, in some case multi-billion-dollar developments showing off the structure, but
Yes.
never in residential homes, other than in post beams.
Yep. It's true, you know, and I do think too, like, because of that, because it's all exposed, we do have there's a high level of bandwidth put into what does the finished product, what it's going to look like for the people,
What
even
does
the
it
surface.
feel like?
Yeah, what is, because that's why they're sanded. You know, there's an edging on. We just nice little nipped edge off of the edge. You know, so it just feels touchable, I guess, and also like the final say of a piece really would be whoever sanded the piece. If there's an issue with something that I don't feel like, Gabe or I do a lot of the sanding. If we feel like, then we'll go get Greg or Kayle and say, what do you think? We're not sure about this piece. Should it be remade? If we've got a piece for it, you know, we're going to make sure that every piece is acceptable.
And as a family-run business, all of that reflects back on us.
I mean,
So-
it's wood. It's, you know, so there's going to be checks. There's going to be things that, you know, that kind of stuff. But there is still this sense of like, oh, I don't, you know, that I just don't feel like that should be included in this giant sculpture. It's not quite the right piece, you know.
What is
That's
your
human
wastage?
touch.
Waste, it's right around 6%.
6%.
Yeah. So there's times where we look at the
palette.
the palette,
The free palette.
We think, wow, that was $1,500 in expensive kiln dried wood that we're going to be giving away. But so the waste now, we grind everything up into a fine sawdust.
Okay.
It's bagged, and then we send it to a local farm that turns it into compost.
For
So we
free.
feel
Okay.
It's
we
free.
feel really good about where it's
Yeah,
going.
of course.
And then
Exactly.
the
It's-
pieces that are left,
and it's
though,
returning back to the earth, you know.
Yeah.
So I look at it and it's like, okay, we've got this timber frame that's storing a bunch of embodied carbon. There's like all these trees. They're going to be here for. Hopefully, this timber frame is here for 500 years. I have no idea
Yeah.
if it's got if it has a good roof over it and a good enclosure system.
good foundation.
that allows it to stay. Sorry,
That's all right.
I knew that was going to happen.
That's all right.
Yeah.
And even if something did happen, some seismic event that did happen, it's going to turn into a nice kitchen table, isn't it? 'Cause that's what people look for.
Certainly.
Yeah.
Like, there's
Absolutely.
nothing here that can't be reused
Yep.
in
Absolutely.
its entirety. You know, the amount of craftspeople that we know that we literally killed to find one of these buildings on its side,
Yeah.
just to use the wood.
Yeah.
Like, everything is 100% circular for what you're doing.
I'm going to tell you right now, there is a barn that's maybe 500 yards behind this building, up in a
yes.
field that I've walked to so many times through
Yeah.
the years just to go check out. It's like dilapidated. It was on the verge of falling in 3 or 4 months ago, and now it has fallen in.
Oh my goodness.
There is a 12-inch by 18-inch deep, probably 30-some foot long piece of chestnut in there that I've looked at for
Yeah.
years, and I drool over it. And now it's on the ground, and I'm gonna find a way to get it.
Oh, that's awesome. There's a story
That's
in that, isn't
amazing.
there?
Yeah,
That is amazing.
Sure. So it's funny that you say that.
Yeah. With as amazing as they are, why do you not think more people have this style?
There's certainly a barrier to entry with costs. Like in this world, like a lot of things, there's been systems developed that allow for the commoditization of pretty much every product,
Yeah.
housing included.
Everything.
So this is certainly more expensive, and you end up essentially building another house around it if you want to insulate it properly and go about it the right way to code. So I think that there's a big barrier to entry as far as cost goes. But that being said, we realize that not everybody's going to be able to afford our craft. That's why we get particularly excited when we get to build buildings that are public use.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So that
cool.
people can experience, as you were saying in Heathrow. There's thousands and thousands of people walking through there every day that get to enjoy that ironwork or that timber work that's in that building. So when we build public pavilions, or we built a nature center in upstate New York, those hold a particular near and dear
Yes, of course.
part in our heart, because we know that people that can't afford to look at this all the time are going to be able to experience it and enjoy the wonder of a timber frame.
Then I would say too that over the years we've built a number of homes for people that they're going to save their pennies. They're going to figure out how they can do some of the work, or they can make a deal with somebody else to do some of the work, like, maybe the electrical or whatever, to make it so that they can have their timber frame dream.
I'm trying to work it out myself. Yeah.
Yes. So they're going to figure it out. It's going to be figured out. And we have built for a number of people like that, where it was very
Non-millionaires.
marginal that they couldn't go to the bank and get that much money to build the timber frame that they wanted. But listen, I have enough money that I can get this enclosed, and then the timber frame's protected, and then I'm just going to pick away at it.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Or my dad's going to help me finish it off inside. He was a builder, that kind of thing. And they end up with the dream that they wanted. And I have a particular fondness for those family homes, thinking of maybe because we raised him in a timber frame that we kind of built ourselves and whatnot. Knowing that there's going to be kids that grow up in that house, there's going to be a lot of family gatherings, and they tend to glow. There's just a nice ambiance in a timber frame. And the other thing that I've often pointed out to people is that because your whole structure is visible, you don't need, at least in my mind, you don't need a house that is as large of a footprint. So you can maybe build a smaller footprint home that it
lives bigger.
It lives bigger. It lives bigger. So and a lot of times I've talked people out of, they were going to give up on their dream. Well, I can't have a home like that then. And it's like, well, make it smaller.
Yeah.
And what we tell people, like, to get the price range into a budget that they can afford, like, we encourage people that are in that position to reduce, like, make a smaller footprint, use local material. So white pine, like this frame here, is a great example of a local material. It's abundant. There's big white pine trees in the Adirondacks in upstate New York where we source from, and it's relatively inexpensive.
Okay.
And then simplify, don't do a bunch of fancy archwork, do a simple purlin design, like principal purlin or a ridge beam. You're still going to get that feel of a,
Yes.
of a
Whoa.
And they're all beautiful. Our daughter's home it's probably one of the more simple
simple.
frames,
Yeah,
and
it's gorgeous.
everybody loves it.
Yeah.
I mean, she loves her house.
Yeah.
I love her house, but it doesn't have any real fancy stuff in it, but it's beautiful.
And this is like off topic and backtracking a little
Sorry?
bit, but I'm still thinking about like this, like, building laying on its side type thing. And one of the things that we've really made a stride towards over the past, I would say, 5 years, is being sure that our timber frames can be dismantled properly. Mm-hmm. So something that we recently instituted is we're now printing a set of our assembly drawings, which is like, it's a labeled, it has every single component with a number on it, and then there's a corresponding tag on the end of each timber. We're printing off a set of those on waterproof paper, rolling them up and hiding them in the frame.
Yeah.
That's cool.
When
That's
somebody does,
super
because
cool.
inevitably these things are going to get torn down. It's got archival ink on it. Hopefully it's still there, intact. People find it and they say, this is the plan for disassembling.
And it'll be
this.
under like a medallion.
That's
thing,
super
so you'll
cool.
know where it is.
That's sick.
Yeah.
I've never heard of that.
I
Yep,
really
so
like
we're
that.
trying to build them to be
It's like a little
torn
treasure.
down.
or at least dismantled.
Yeah, dismantled. Yeah.
That's really cool.
I mean, and the truth is I mean, and we've done that over our, not as a company, but as a child, my father, he and I dismantled a timber frame barn and put it back up on our property.
Nice.
So, that can be done.
Yeah, and we've given a lot of thought to the joinery that works well to be dismantled without damaging the end product. So I think we've developed a palette of joinery that allows you to take a timber frame apart in a couple hundred years without breaking anything or cutting something into pieces to get it out.
It's good design.
That's really cool.
Yeah.
That ticks all the boxes for me. Like being able to take the frame to bits and
Yeah.
Well,
the thought that even where we're sat now could be taken apart, put in containers, and re-erected in Scotland somewhere.
Yeah.
Like that's
And they're doing it. I mean, it's not like, it's certainly not a new way of thinking. Like, this is really an ancient way of thinking.
yeah, but it's a lost way of thinking.
It's a
Yeah, it's
lost,
a
way, of
lost way of
thinking.
thinking.
So yeah, we're used to now with commoditized housing. It's like, well, this has outlived its useful lifespan. We're going to smash it, and we're going to crunch it up into a container and ship it off to a landfill. But right now, I can see on Instagram, it's incredible to see people doing this in Japan, where they've been timber framing for eons. They're tearing down old barns and shipping them all around the world, and they're still intact. They've got all the little pins and wedges and anchors and stuff. They can be taken apart without ruining them, and that's cool. That's really
That is
cool.
really cool.
And that's like the inspiration for like what we're doing. I want to be sure that our stuff isn't, I guess, anchored to one life. It could have
multiple lives. Yeah.
another useful
In a
life.
different area.
And we've always,
In a different area,
it's important. It's really important to me to think in terms of that. Like we were talking about what happens with the byproducts, and so forth. Well, anything that's larger, it always goes out on a pallet by the road for free. And the area people love us.
Yeah, I bet they do.
I mean,
They
it
do all
doesn't take
sorts of
long at
things
all.
on it.
Somebody's backed up there with their Forester, opening up the hatchback, filling
Yeah.
it up.
1,500 quid off the free
Wood turners take a lot of the bigger chunks and so forth. We see them all around the countryside as temporary steps, holding up pots of plants, and it's so funny because it's like, that's one of our blocks. Even our old workshop was repurposed up on the mountain near us as a horse barn.
Yeah,
Nice.
it was re-erected.
Yep.
Really?
Yep. We
That's
go to
cool.
visit it now and then. It's got, and they have a business there of.
They actually take our
that,
shavings
yeah.
and make
They
the compost.
They do.
It's the same farm.
And then they have like a bunch of greenhouses and so forth. And,
Yeah.
Do you ever think about legacy?
Oh yeah.
Oh, yeah.
All the time.
I don't. No.
I do.
But maybe
But
she
see,
could
that may be
speak to
the
it.
age. So, like there
I
was.
think you do, and I'm going to
Yeah.
tell you why in a minute. Please,
There was
Connie.
a drill. Well, you just
Okay.
said, about
Yeah.
making sure that there was,
Exactly.
they were being able to be repurposed. But I think the older you get, and then like now we have 3 grandsons, and you really start to think about the idea of legacy as you start to get age. I just turned 60 in February. Greg just turned 65 on Sunday, and right now he's our legacy, but we see those 3 grandsons as legacy too.
Of course, yeah.
And of course I'm sure Kayle's hopeful that it continues on, and that they take the path in another way. Even they can go even further. They can do
Yeah,
whatever.
So, maybe you're right. Maybe I do. to
Did
a
you
point.
roll up drawings and hide them inside timber frames?
Yeah,
Whether
like
it's for you or for the
So-
building, I think about
That
it.
gave me away.
no way.
Yeah. No, I think not so much like personal legacy, more about like legacy of our product. And
Yeah.
and yeah, in that sense, that's why we roll up plans and
Exactly.
hide them in a frame.
Yes.
It's legacy of our product, and if whether or not that's tied to Kayle Sickler, I don't really care.
Yeah, but if it's tied
Yeah.
to settlement post and beam and it means this frame can live on elsewhere,
Yeah,
that's the important bit, right?
absolutely.
Very true.
What would you do if you knew you couldn't fail?
Couldn't fail.
Could not fail.
Oh wow, you're gonna have to edit out a long pause here.
Sorry? It's fine. We can leave
I
it
knew
for
I couldn't
suspense.
fail.
It's a great spot for an ad break if anyone
So
wants to
I can
sponsor.
I can speak to that.
Okay.
I got
He'd
it.
buy the field next door and he'd make us bigger.
No, there would have to be a
it's-
goal. There would have to be a goal like associated with it though. Like there would have to be a reason for it.
Getting
Yeah,
Like-
I guess that's true.
Man, oh man. You know, it'd be cool if there was a way to, and maybe this is not even tied to Settlement Post and Beam or that brand, but if there was a way to make these accessible to people at a price point that
True.
that was entry level and sustainable, maybe I would try to figure out a way to build a business that would allow us to serve a different market. Because right now we serve millionaires and billionaires
Yeah.
for the most part.
Yeah.
So yeah, if I knew I couldn't fail, maybe I would take that on. But then again, it would be a calculation of like how much is this gonna? Because every time you say yes to something, you're saying no to something
Something else.
else.
Yeah, that's
So it's
really
like how much time am I gonna take away from
Right.
family
Yeah. Yeah. To do
with
that.
this?
Well, and there is that. There has been a trend in the past few years to try to live smaller, and I don't know that this would be his dream, but I would have loved to have seen the ability to do really, really well thought out small homes. That it's kind of the idea that you're talking about,
Yeah.
but that would allow that dream for people, even if it's for, like a second place on their property or whatever. That like this is
Like an
this is
ADU.
our cool little place.
Yeah.
This is our little cool place. That that we will always keep this place. And maybe it would be able to be moved too. Goes with you.
That's a really interesting
know?
concept, isn't it? Because what does this look like if it's the half of what we're sat in here? What's
Right.
that, 3.5 metre centres, 3.5, 4 metre centres, single pitched upstairs, downstairs.
Yeah.
You think about what that would take to build in a stick frame with 16-inch centres, 600mm centres the whole way across, versus 1, 2, 3, 4 posts.
Right.
I mean, I know they're bigger timbers, but they're
Yeah.
4 posts.
Exactly.
And how repeatable is the product? Presumably very.
Very.
You could modularize it.
Yes,
Exactly, yeah.
definitely.
Yeah.
That's really interesting.
And I think that there's going to be people doing that. In the near
I think
future.
you should say yes to it.
You guys should see
I
this.
think you should say yes.
It's not going to be me, but
Maybe Landry.
maybe
My son, who knows? Yeah.
Because
don't
the
know, I'm
more
gonna-
of them that are out there, the more the same with anything to do with craft, and I think that's where Instagram's been phenomenal for
The more
craft.
people that see it, the more people can
Yeah.
Appreciate
and,
appreciate it.
and it ties back again to like what I like about that potential model is that you're building something that's going to last and that people want to be a steward of.
Yes.
Yes.
So certainly you could build small ADU like box frame, like boring little white cubes.
Yeah.
You can do it, but in 30 years when that trend is gone or somebody has like a change of heart or it's going to get smashed and put in a box and shipped to the landfill.
I
But
think about this
if
with the
you
tiny
build-
home movement a lot,
Yeah.
But if you
because they're not
build
really
small-
livable.
Maybe if you built a small modular timber frame, people would be more apt to save it, and it'd be better for our environment. It'd be better in a lot of, and just it would teach people to take care of things instead of trash them.
Yeah.
Quite.
I do think about this a lot with the tiny house movement, because everyone loves the sort of house on the back of a trailer at the moment.
Right.
Mystique of it all.
Yeah, but they're crap to live in, they're crap to watch the TV in, they're crap to sleep in.
I know.
Like, you're basically
Yeah.
compromising on a kitchen, a bathroom, a living space, a sleeping space. You're compromising on all of it. And then for the benefit of what? Being able to move it?
Yeah.
So if
Yeah.
you could have the low cost able to move it, but not compromise on those things,
Yeah.
Right.
That's another podcast for a couple of
Here
years
we
when
go.
you do that.
We're gonna put one on a trailer and
Well, and one of the things too, I mean, I know we live in a little bit cooler climate, but there's still, there's a good 6 months that it's really quite nice and so forth. And a lot of the customers that we have built, family homes for, that were marginal on how much money they had. One of the things that they almost never would give up was a large exterior timber frame portion that made it, you live out there too. There's a good
Outside living.
allowed you
Yeah.
to spill outside.
yeah, exactly. And there really is a value to those exterior spaces. Not only do they add to the beauty of the exterior aesthetic of the home, but they also just make it seem bigger.
Yeah.
That's
They do make it seem a lot bigger.
Yep.
Do you think, Greg, your husband, Kayle, your father, do you think that he thinks about legacy?
Oh, I think probably he thinks about legacy more than any of us, to tell you the truth. Because again, he's the oldest. He is getting close to where he could consider retiring. I'm not sure when that will totally happen, but maybe he could start stepping back some at some point. But he definitely I think he thought about it as soon as Kayle said he would come into the business.
Yeah, that was.
I think it was like,
see that.
yes.
Yes.
Okay, now my life was worth it.
Yeah.
My son is now going to take this on and make it more. And he's the one that, every time Kayle would come to us with the next plan, like, what do you think, Mom and Dad?
Yeah.
Do you think we could do this? Do you think we could figure out how to manage this next phase? And it was, with him, it's like, well, yeah, it's going to be yours. So we'll figure it out.
Right.
And
it's funny, like for me, and I don't think it's fair, but I feel like there's like this negative connotation with legacy, and maybe it's like this idea of like personal legacy, like people compiling masses of wealth and like putting it in a building.
True, yes.
But like if you think of legacy in the sense of like it's what you're teaching people and what lives on in other people after you, then oh man, it's
I don't
How
think
can you
what
not
I
think about it?
Yeah, that's what I think about with legacy.
Yeah.
I think about things that you passed on,
Yeah.
not inheritance.
And memories.
Yeah.
Inheritance is a
suppose-
whole different thing to me.
Yeah.
The legacy from my standpoint, and maybe it's more an Americanization versus just the way I've been brought up, is what will you be remembered for? That's
Right.
kind of what I mean
Yes.
for that.
Yeah. Did they stand for something?
Did they stand for
Yeah.
something?
Yeah. Right.
You look like you're thinking about it now.
I do. Yeah, I think about that. Yeah.
Well, and I would say that just based on what I'm sitting here listening to what you're saying too, Kayle, and his legacy is work-life balance.
Yeah.
I mean, I
Absolutely.
do think that that's a lot of it, along with, the product, but it's that having time for family, doing something you love,
And building cool stuff.
building cool
Yeah.
stuff. Yeah. And we are all, we're makers to the bone.
Yeah.
We're the happiest, all of us, including, the generations before us. It's just in our blood to make things. And if we're not able to make things for a period of time, if whatever circumstances in life kind of throw you out of that routine, you're not as happy. You're just like, I didn't get anything done today because I can't see a product,
They make cool stuff. We talked a podcast a while ago, and I always wanted to do a t-shirt that was just make cool shit, sell it, be happy. That's all it needs to be, right? That's all it needs to be, because that really is
If you
all
boil
there
it
is to
down, that's it.
Yeah.
Is it?
Yeah.
It's well, and speaking to that kind of maker mentality, like my base degree was in studio art, fine arts, and then I have a master's in art education. Well, when I quit teaching, I spent 9 years teaching. People would ask me like, "Oh, why did you quit teaching?" and so forth. And it's like, it wasn't because of the kids. It had nothing to do with that. I love teaching. It had to do with I didn't get a chance to make myself enough.
Yes.
So there's this ethereal, yes, you're making these future artists. Yeah, but I didn't
still-
get to make it.
Yeah. Yeah.
You
I'm
know,
still an
and
artist.
so deep down, it was not as fulfilling. I wasn't born to be, or I wasn't born to be a teacher. I was born to be a maker.
Yeah.
You know,
But you've given your time to
teaching
kids.
too,
Yeah.
you know, and I still do. But it's still, I'm not somebody that, like, I didn't feel called to be a teacher.
Yeah,
I was
okay.
called to be an artist,
Yeah, that's
you
amazing.
know.
So, a question for both. So, what would you be making if it wasn't timber frames?
I think I could be happy making a lot of things.
He built furniture all through when he was in college for extra money. Beautiful
I did.
furniture.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I've made a lot of furniture over the years. I don't know if that's what I'd be doing. I honestly really enjoy design work on the computer too. And I get a deep satisfaction out of a well-crafted design. So I think if I wasn't building timber frames, I would want to be a landscape designer or,
Okay.
Yeah.
or an architect, I
Yeah.
think.
Nice.
In fact, he would have considered that back in the day when he was thinking of what he wanted to be, you know, going to college. He was being recruited for baseball too. So, well, you have to take into consideration if you're going to go to, you know, a Division I school and you're going to play a sport, then you have to think about your major. And he probably would have gone for architecture if he hadn't been a baseball player.
And I think I'm a lot happier for not going that route. Like I think that I'm in my happiest spot.
Good.
That's cool.
You're content.
Yeah, I'm content.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And why shouldn't I be?
Yeah, you've worked this hard.
I think I'd be pretty content if I was in your shoes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like with your mindset in your shoes, not that I'm not content, but some days I'm not.
Well, so are
But
we
like,
some days.
yeah. Like with your mindset and what we've learnt about you over the years of knowing you through, you know, the article and now sitting that, like, you all seem quite content.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Maybe that is the craft here.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But the craft of being there's a good
I
book
think
in that,
there
and
is
the
something
craft
to
of being
that.
content.
You know, I do think there is something to that. You actually have to periodically rebalance even your life. Like you have to look at it and think, okay, I'm going a little crazy right now. Like what needs to change? Because I'm not going to be like this. I'm not going to stay this way.
Life's too short.
I'm
You
not
know.
showing up my best right now.
Yep.
Yeah.
We certainly have
Maybe
days.
not showing up your best for yourself. You know,
And you have
because you
to.
do have to consider. You know, life is only so long.
Your well-being
You
is
need
so
to be
important.
happy.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's an interesting thought.
Do you remember the question the last makers gave us to ask on?
It was what
Was it that one?
what you'd be doing if it wasn't.
Okay.
I'm sure it was.
That's
What
a
would you
good
be doing?
question.
Yeah, it is a good question.
And then the other question was why do you do it?
But I think
But we've covered
we've
that
covered why.
Oh,
Yeah.
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 in great depth.
Because you have to.
Yeah.
Yeah, because you
Like
have
you
to.
have to.
Yeah.
It's just
Yeah,
like,
there is an amount of that because you absolutely have to.
in fact, I mean, it's funny too. Like my father, you know, he's a minister and psychologist. However, he's always a maker, and I've always noticed even his own watching his happiness as a child looking on. It's even a grandchild looking on.
It's correlated. to
Grandpa
product.
is the happiest when he has a personal building project. I mean,
Yeah.
he designed the additions to our churches. He has beautiful furniture quality paneling and things like that. You know, and he is the happiest when he can take you out to show you what he made. You know, it's
He's
We're
proud.
currently looking at maybe making what could be the most stupid decision of our life with a property we've found in Scotland. All on the basis that I am so happy climbing up a set of ladders and
Yeah.
laying a roof.
Yeah.
Or
Kate was
ripping
telling me
down a
about
wall.
this, and I
Like,
think it's great.
just, and I think you're
Fingers
absolutely right. It's just
Yep.
whatever makes you unapologetically yourself. Like what you say is like, be here. Like if you're here and exactly in the spot that you're content with, that's pretty cool.
And if you have a dream like that, like, because I had talked to Kate about this when we were up at our property. If you have a dream like that, you're the kind of people that it will happen.
Yeah.
Yeah. And the ones that scare you, those are the good ones. If it doesn't scare you, it's probably not that good of an idea.
Oh, you should have said the first bunch of quotes that you gave me for the magazine. They were a bit like, "Oh, this is an investment."
Yeah. Yeah.
Turns out trying to start an international media company is a big old investment.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It should hurt a little bit.
It does hurt a little bit, but it hurts less and less every time we do a drop.
Yeah.
But you know, that speaks to having faith in yourselves, because you're investing in yourself, and if you trust yourself, then to me you're safe. because you know how much you're willing to give to it. In fact, people have asked us before, like, I mean, we've had to put money into, it's like you were saying,
It's
you're
not a
putting
small
money
operation.
in, and like, I think Kayle has always appreciated that we were willing to put the faith in him, because truly we have faith in him that he will make sure it turns out. And then we're going to be their support too and work hard too. But it's like, I have every bit of faith that he will make sure things happen.
Yeah. Which they have.
Yeah. What would Settlement Post and Beam have been if Kayle never came on board?
Oh.
Greg figured it'd retire with him, because it was really all based around him. It was his body, his his skills, even like installing a frame. It's all in his head. How you go about installing a timber frame. Well, Kayle's learned all this, but it came from Greg. And if Kayle hadn't gone on to become part of that, it would have been done with Greg. No, I think he thought that it was a lifelong craft that he had given his life to, and it would stop when he retired.
I'm so glad that hasn't.
Do you take stock of that often?
No.
Today you have.
Yeah, today I have, and I appreciate this conversation, because I think it's making me think about a lot of the deeper meaning behind the decisions that we've made to get where we are today. And I'm really happy that I decided to build that website years and years ago. And
It's crazy that
Me
all
too.
of this is because of a website.
Yeah.
Not from, I went and helped out on site one day.
No.
I've seen it firsthand. It was,
No,
I
he had
built
to help
a
out
website.
on site a lot. So
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
it just shows you how important marketing is to a business. I mean, we talk about it
Yeah.
all the time, like makers, just market yourself in a way in
Yes.
which people will get to know who you are. And, there's a lot of investment in there.
You couldn't be
Personal
more right,
investment.
Kate. Like,
Yeah.
and the foresight of you, Connie and Greg, to be like, well, yeah, but you've got a marketing degree, so go make a wage for yourself, and then
Yes.
of course you can come on board.
And it's honestly, it's one of the most vulnerable things that you can do as a craftsperson is put yourself on camera, talk about what you're doing, take photos of something that you poured your heart into,
Yeah.
and put it out there for thousands of people to look at. Like, it's
And like that, like if you've done something wrong,
They'll let
thousands
you
of
know.
people have
It's-
seen it
yeah,
before
they'll let
you
you know,
realised it's wrong.
exactly.
oh sure, yeah, and we've been in that position. Sure, we've learned from things that we've shared on Instagram. It's I've gotten messages about things like, hey, that's not how that ought to be done. Okay, help me understand.
Yeah.
And there's been people that have brought up really good points that we've implemented changes
Okay.
from.
That's cool.
That's
Yeah,
good.
Being able to use that for the right reasons, right?
sure,
Yeah,
sure.
and that's, to me, you learn your whole life. And if you're not willing to learn from the people around you, I mean, it's one thing for them to just criticize. But if they have a valid point, or if they have a great idea, listen to them. I got good ideas from my students. Kids have great ideas. So to me, don't just think you know it all.
Yeah, because you're limited to your experiences.
Yep.
And
Exactly.
if you're living in that headspace, you're not going to go very far, in my opinion.
No, you're
So
right.
yeah, be a lifelong learner and listen to what people are saying.
Yeah.
I don't think there's enough people that are lifelong learners anymore.
No.
Everyone seems to think, I mean, I certainly did when I was 20 odd, like you come out of university and you're like, right, that's me, I know it all.
And it's
I didn't know shit. Didn't know anything.
and it's honestly it's a sign of like insecurity, like not wanting to listen to what other people have to say. So like I've certainly become more open to listening to what people have to say within our craft as I've gained experience and knowledge about our craft. When I initially came in, I knew everything. And it's amazing that my dad and I didn't fight, because he knew tons more than me.
Yeah.
But here I am telling him how things have to be done.
Yeah. It's
So I think as you gain experience, it gives you some insight into what you don't know, and it makes you more open to admitting that you don't know it all. And you're probably not going to.
no.
Yep.
It'd be boring if you did know everything,
It
right?
would be, I know. Yeah.
I think, and speaking to a family kind of business, I think one of the things that makes it successful is if you keep an ego out of it. and that's basically the relationship that Kayle and Greg have always had. There's never been an ego there. It's more like you're working toward a common goal.
Yeah.
So you can't think that they're picking on you just because they see it in a little different way. You need to instead think, we've always thought, well, he's thinking from it a different way from us, a different point of view, maybe from age or from the experiences he's had that we haven't had. And then Greg and I think about it from our experience, our age, things like that. And I think if you don't pay some homage to the other people involved, then that's when you can get into fights and it might not work.
Yeah.
You know, because I don't know. I think there are a lot of family businesses that don't work well because of the butting heads and so forth. But
and a lot of times the correct idea in the end is if you take that one and this
you
one
put it all together.
and you add it together and you divide it by 2.
yes, and that's pretty much the way we've always done it.
Yeah.
It's everybody gets their little bit of say in everything. Yeah.
Right.
So true.
Amazing.
Is there anything before Kate closes with her closing question that you guys want to share that we've not shared yet or we've not talked about?
No, I think that pretty much wraps it up. I would say to other makers out there trying to put their work into the world to just stick with it and make their cool shit and sell it
Yeah.
and buy the t-shirt.
And also,
one day it's coming out.
and remember to you're making not just for other people, you're making for yourself.
That's important.
You know, if you're a maker at heart. You have to make. And so, yeah, the selling is important, but so is the making. You know?
Love it. And my final question is, what advice would you give your younger self?
That one. Jeez. Give me a pause.
Coffee break.
You know, I'll tell you what. I wouldn't change any decisions that I've made. And part of that is because you learn from wrong decisions.
More.
Yes.
Yeah.
So
true.
in a lot of times, just taking time to really think, and I mean, some of the biggest decisions of mine and Greg's lives were made on a weekend of like just talking back and forth and brainstorming and whatnot, even buying this property that this business is set on. It was one of those things where his mother was on a trip and the family land came, there was an offer on the family land. And Greg and I decided, rather than to try to get a hold of her, it's like, listen, we're going to match that offer. We made that decision over the course of a weekend. Do you think we should do this? Do we have the money? Do we, can we do this? I don't know, And then we just decided we're going to do it. So if the family will take the amount of money that the other people were going to offer, we're going to buy it. And then, it was the same with, other decisions in our life that were big decisions. It's a lot of times it's a weekend or a few evenings of like pretty heavy discussions, and then maybe stepping out on a limb, and maybe the limb's not always terribly strong,
We got faith.
but if you have that dream, you'll figure it out. And the thing is even failures, they're part of life. And like Kayle said, mistakes, you learn a lot from a mistake. Speaking as an artist, and I'm sure guys too, you make.
I would say that you only learn from mistakes.
You really do, because in a lot of cases, you hopefully can learn from somebody else's mistake watching, but typically you learn from your own.
I think you have to learn when you're on sometimes. Yeah.
You do.
Yeah. Can you ask the question one more time? Because I almost forgot what was it?
What advice would you give your younger self?
Well, okay. Yeah. I would say the advice that I wish I had when I was, in high school maybe, or early in college, is that everybody has imposter syndrome. The best way to get where you want to go is by talking to the people that are there and learning that they had the same apprehensions that you have now.
Yes.
So if you go into a conversation with somebody that you feel like maybe shouldn't even be giving you the time of day, or that you don't deserve to be chatting with about this particular topic, go in knowing that they were in your shoes once and that they had to learn just like you're learning, and that they had the same insecurities and the same apprehensions when they were building whatever it was they built, and just
It's very true.
just learn from through experience, and I don't know. Yeah.
That's a very good point. And actually, I try to keep that in mind too. Like because we get contacted quite often, questions online and so forth. That it's like, do I take the time? I need to take some time here, and I really want to write back to this person. But it does take time, and we don't have, we're spread pretty thin. There's only so much bandwidth, But I think to myself, but if that were me, I'd want them to get back to me. So, we try our darndest, we'll put it that way, to get back to people if they, they contact us about some question that they have, or can they come to see, or
And honestly,
whatever.
Most people are so charitable with advice.
Yeah.
Like I've gotten some of the best advice from just people that I just manned up and decided, okay, I'm just gonna call this person. They might be
Professor at a
they might
fancy
be
university.
very famous in a small in a small vein that I'm interested in, but they might want to share with me, or maybe we'll just have a good conversation about
If you don't ask, you'll know.
where they traveled.
The flip side of that is also you're validating that person's work.
Right.
Whenever anyone's phoned me about various jobs or various things I've done, or whenever people, we're in this micro niche creating this magazine that's, done tens and tens and tens of thousands of copies around the world now, which is nothing compared to like the National Geographics of the world that are doing like 1.8 million every, 2 months or something like that. Like, we're in this microcosm. And every so often someone will just message and be like, hey, I really want to start a magazine. There was a guy the other day, I really want to start a magazine about
Outdoors,
the outdoors, specifically in the UK, and specifically about low cost entry to the outdoor world. And I was like, that's hyper niche. There's my phone number, we'll be in the car between these hours, just phone me.
And he did.
Like, and he probably thought for ages, he said he'd followed us for years, so how long has he thought about asking us the question?
Right.
And actually, we were having a pretty crap day when he phoned, and it was real validation that people are watching us.
It's very true.
And
You're right,
our
Jack.
work
There
is
was nobody,
worthwhile.
when I started the magazine, there was nobody that I felt I could ask. I did ask a few times.
And nobody would give you anything.
Nobody would help, and I was just like, I'd hate to be in that position, so I'll help somebody.
take the
If
time.
whatever we've learned, then,
Yep.
because it's hard starting a magazine, so why would you not?
Absolutely.
So why would you not say to somebody,
very
as long as they're not doing the exact same thing, but
There's competition to be considered.
but it's been good. It's been good.
Thanks so much for your time.
This has been an amazing conversation.
Well,
I really
You definitely
enjoyed
make
it.
the biggest things that of any makers we've spoken to. And the quality doesn't drop based on the quantity and size. So it's really, really interesting. I think you're doing something really, really cool.
I'm glad
And I
we're able to
really
visit.
love yes, you have moved to CNC, obviously the first time everything was hand cut.
Yeah.
I love the reasons.
Yes.
Why? Because that's the craft to me.
Yeah.
And what a great thing to end on. Thank you so much for listening to our podcast. If it made you smile today or feel inspired, hit follow, leave us a review, or share it with a fellow maker. It really means the world. If you'd like to support what we do even more, you can subscribe to our quarterly print magazine, where you'll find even more maker stories in every edition. We'd also like to share that we're working on the We Are Makers grant. Once we reach 2,500 magazine subscribers, we'll be giving 11% of all our subscriptions directly to makers to help fund tools, travel, photo shoots, or anything that moves their craft forward. Find the link to all of this in our show notes. We'll see you soon, wherever the next story takes us.